Hey everyone, you're listening to the Simple Electronics Podcast. I'm your host, Dan from the Simple Electronics YouTube channel. And with me today, I have absolutely no one special. It is just me again today. But I swear I've got a good reason for it this time. It's just because I am on vacation. Well, staycation, I guess. Taking a little bit more time off from my two traditional jobs in order to work a little bit more on YouTube. So, as some of you might know, I work 3 jobs. So I work at a college as an automotive service technician professor, and I also work at a mobile mechanic thing. So I work as a professional mechanic, and then I work on the YouTube channel. And between the 3 of these, when I have the 3 of these going consecutively, I'm actually at a point in my life where the bank account goes up. YouTube, for me, when I do like sponsored videos, is a very slight positive. Actually, the channel is either neutral in cost or slightly on the positive side, and that's thanks to sponsors like PCBWay, which this episode is sponsored by, but more about that a little bit later. Otherwise, the college and the mobile mechanic, actually the college is the bulk of my income. And so this semester that I just finished, it was an absolutely insanely busy semester for me. Like to the point where I got home every day and I only really worked 7 hours a day. So, I mean, it's 7 hours. It's 6 hours of student contact and then 1 hour of lunch, which I usually spent working. But it's 7 hours of like ridiculously mentally draining work. For whatever reason, I don't really know if it's because of the students' makeup this year, like how the group dynamics worked, working with my colleague, or what it was. But it was exhausting to the point where I would get home. You know, we start fairly early and then finish around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But I would get home and I was a mental wreck. Like I was completely destroyed. And so a lot of kind of like the YouTube stuff really took the sidelines because, 5 days a week I was working at these 2 jobs that were mentally exhausting. Well, the mechanics job was more like physically exhausting, but, that's kind of beside the point. So I was getting to the point where I was feeling some massive burnout. Like I felt completely dead. Mentally because of the college job and physically because of the mechanics job. And so now that my contract with the college has ended, which is the sad part of working at the college, it's very spiky income. Like I'll work a contract for a couple months and then I'll be off until they have a new contract for me, which it seems as though the next contract will take a while. I've been through this cycle before. It's just that the last couple of years have been good, and now it looks like it's going to be bad. So I might only expect another contract next summer. So, my income will go way down for the next 8 or 9 months or so. But it is what it is. I've weathered the storm before, so I'm going to weather it again. I just have to, plan for it. And then I've got my mechanics job. I took 3 weeks off the mechanics job. So this is the Wednesday of my second week? First week? Second week? I don't remember now. Oh God, is this already my second week off? I have to figure that out. Anyways, it's either my first week or my second week off. I don't know. Time flies so quickly. And I've taken 3 weeks off. And so the 3 weeks are really supposed to, be able to center myself, sort of, take a breath. I haven't had like vacation time, quote unquote vacation, for years, and so I'm really happy to take some time off. And then I'm also sort of letting my creative juices flow again, which is really nice. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. But the plan was to spend some time on the water, right? A lot of you know I have a little aluminum boat, and I had bought some lithium iron phosphate batteries. And so the plan was to do like long distance testing, like how long will 100 amp hours last you on like a little electric trolling motor. I was supposed to spend some time, fishing. My wife and I planned on driving up to Montreal, which is about 2.5 hours by road, by highway speeds from Ottawa, where we live, and visit the Biodome, which if you guys haven't heard about that, the Biodome is literally a dome with a zoo inside, but instead of like sort of walking up to animal enclosures, they're more like walkways through the environments that the animals live in. So they have a couple of sections. One would be like tropical rainforest. There's a boreal rainforest. There's 4 anyways. And the animals are just kind of free to roam inside their ecosystems. And then you're just walking on walkways, with either they're high above or they have, glass railings or whatever, so the animals can't interact with you. But you're basically living in their environment, which is a really cool place. We used to try to go once every year or two or whatever, but since the pandemic, we really haven't been going out anywhere. We're just sort of homebodies, right? Stuck at home, and really didn't have any time off because, working 3 jobs on my end, and my wife, who works even harder than me at her one, I guess, yeah, you would call it one job for her, but it's like sort of, 14-hour a day affair. So we haven't had the chance to go, and so we planned on going. Well, the week that we planned on going, that's when my transmission failed in my 2001 Volvo. And just to follow up the story on that, I ripped it out, broke a whole bunch of stuff, had to order parts. I'm in the hole right now, about $1,600 Canadian, including taxes and everything. But all the parts that I broke, the shipping, all the stuff, the transmission, and then I go for a road test. Either last week or the week before. I think it was last week. And lo and behold, I think this is my first week off. Anyways, doesn't matter. Lo and behold, the used transmission, $800 Canadian, slips. So it doesn't work. So I've spent probably about 25 hours removing this transmission, installing a used one, and the used one slips. Now it's under warranty. And the guy said he's pulling a transmission this week for me. This is what he said last week. But that means I have to do the job again. And so this was supposed to be my relaxed time. But at the same time, I have to spend probably 2 days, one day pulling the transmission, getting my old man here with his pickup truck, loading the transmission to his pickup truck, driving down. It's about a half hour away, the recycler where we got the part, and exchange the part, and then another day to install it and test drive it and all that stuff. So that sucks a little bit, but, there could be worse things. And so there's that. Another thing my wife and I are planning on doing on my time off is to go walk through the Gatineau Park. So Canada is quite famous for having a lot of national parks, a little bit like the US has, except I believe ours are more numerous. There's more of them around, and they tend to be big. Like the US has a bunch of state parks and federal parks and stuff like that, and which is great. But I think the ones in Canada are just closer together and really huge. And I think the reason for that is because we're not as densely populated as the States. So if you want to take a look, on Google Maps, if you check Algonquin Park, that is the big one in Ontario, and Gatineau Park is a big one on the Quebec side, and those would be two different states, two different provinces, and Ottawa is on the Ontario side, and we are just on the border of Quebec, so it's really not that far, and it's a big sort of green space. And what's great right now is that students are back in school. Not my students. My students are doing their more advanced training now, which is given by other professors, very good professors. But that means that there are fewer people in the trails. So we're going to be able to, spend some good hours in nature. We actually live not all that far from other nature trails, so we're planning on doing that as well. And just getting, having some downtime to finally let things settle. And I've been, listening to a whole bunch of podcasts, mostly H3H3, because I've been able to sort of have some time to sit around without guilt and, relax. I did a little bit of sim racing, which was nice. I don't do any competitive sim racing. One day I do want to do competitive sim racing. Virtual car racing, basically. One day I'd love to do some competitive stuff, but I'm just having fun at the moment. I like the fact that it's stress-free, and so I've been doing that. That's been quite nice. Cleaned up a little bit of my workshop area. I did do a video not too long ago about the, let's see if I can remember the brand. It was a Dawnstar. That's the one. I took a look at the Dawnstar microscope. That thing is fantastic. The only thing that I would change, there's two things I would change on it, but honestly, that is it. One is that you cannot have HDMI active and the screen active at the same time, which is kind of sad. The other thing is that there's no battery. So it'd be nice to have, an 18650 or a lithium pouch cell in there or something so that it could be self-powered, because just the thing is awesome on its own, but tethering it to a USB anywhere, or a power strip anywhere, is just kind of a little bit of a pain in the butt. If I were buying this, I would definitely buy a 5-volt, like a USB power bank, and just either strapping it on the back or underneath or something, because this thing with a portable battery pack is just incredible. You can pick it up, put it wherever, bring it out into the field, do repairs. The thing is freaking awesome. You get a lot of Z height to work with in order to put your soldering iron underneath and solder with it. The frame rate is pretty decent. It's a pretty good microscope. I really do like it. A consequence of having some time off, like I alluded to before, really did allow me to get some creative juices flowing. So my boss, my mobile mechanic boss, basically, we chat back and forth a lot while we work. And one of the things is that he wanted to sort of figure out a way to test lights and brakes and all these things on trailers. Most of the times, if you have a trailer and you have to check the lights on it, you have to back your truck up to it, and then you have to make it go through a sequence, turn on the park lights, left turn, right turn, brakes, reverse, check the 12-volt auxiliary, etc., and the brake controller actuate and stuff. But I was telling him that I felt like I could probably design him something for not a lot of money to automate the whole process and to make it small and compact and able to sort of test all the trailer components right off the bat. And so because this intersects so well with electronics, I've decided that, while I was watching a podcast, I just got to work on this. And so at the moment, let me share what I have for you and what the vision is for this thing. So first and foremost, when we work mobile, He does have an air compressor. The air compressor is like one of those twin, sausage tanks with a Honda gasoline engine on it, and it turns a compressor. That thing is fantastic, but we hardly ever use air tools. We use that compressor to set, tire pressures and stuff like that, and to run the tire machine, the tire installing machine, and the tire balancer that he has installed in his trailer. And so we don't usually use those for tools like air impact guns and whatever. What we do use is a series of DeWalt 20 volt tools. Like he has a 1/2-inch impact gun, he has a 3/8 impact gun, he has a whole bunch of things like that runs on these 20 volt 5 amp hour DeWalt batteries. So what I proposed to him, because he wanted to have like a little battery and a little module, and he plugs it in and it turns on the lights and whatever. What I proposed to him is that we get one of these adapters that plugs into a lithium ion battery, like the DeWalt batteries. You can get them for all makes and models. And 2 wires come out, and you can take the voltage directly off the battery and do stuff with it. Well, he was interested in that, but what if the lights on the trailer are not 24 volt tolerant? Well, this is where my electronics knowledge comes in. I already have like 350 or 400 watt, I don't remember what wattage they are, DC to DC buck converters, step down converters. And in fact, even if you wanted something waterproof, they make DC to DC, 300-400 watt step down converters that are completely sealed, completely potted in an aluminum box. And so picture this, you have the DeWalt battery, and then you have the DC-DC converter down to 12 volts or 13 volts. A lot of them are not settable, so you have to buy the ones with the voltage you want. And then it would feed a microcontroller. This is all my thoughts at the moment. So it feeds a microcontroller. And the microcontroller has outputs that activate automotive relays. So automotive relays are very robust, but what's great is that you can replace them on like hours notice. If you didn't work in a shop before, it may be surprising to you, but most shop owners or most businesses that are repair garages, they have accounts with parts suppliers. And usually part of that account is you phone in, you order the parts you need, and they will deliver it. They will drive it to you, to your, location for no additional cost. So typically, let's say you drive a car in, you take the wheels off, you notice it needs front brakes, it needs an oil change, whatever. Usually for oil change, you have the stuff in stock, but you can call your parts company, whether that be, Napa or whatever, like parts, car parts supplying stores, and you'll order the parts and they'll put it on your account, and then they'll, give it to one of their employees, and they'll just go around town delivering parts literally all day. So if I was thinking about using, solder in, those Arduino 12 volt relays, but if I use automotive relays, then if something goes wrong with them, we can just swap them out. Okay, so you've got relays. In my mind, there were 5 of them. Okay, so one would be for the right turn and right brake. They're the same light on trailers typically. The other one will be for left turn and brake. Okay, same bulb, those two. Then another one for parking lights. So that the parking lights are sort of like the dim tail lights, and they also include your marker lights, your clearance lights. And then one for the reverse lights. Not a lot of trailers have the reverse lights, but some do. And if you're using a standard 7-pin plug, you might as well include it. And then I was thinking one more for the auxiliary. For basically, you can usually charge the battery in your trailer through the 7-pin connector, from the car alternator. So that there's an auxiliary. All right. So you've got 5 of the 7 pins. The last pin is the brakes. Most trailers over a certain weight, they have electromagnetic brakes. And so when you hit your brakes on your car or truck, there's a brake controller that sends an analog voltage into the trailer brakes, which activates the magnet. And the harder you press the brakes, the more voltage it'll send, up to a maximum of 12 volts. And so the more voltage, the stronger the magnet, the stronger the braking force, which is usually adjustable. And so for testing, to make sure they apply, you want to do this without the car, I was thinking of PWMing a signal to a MOSFET to send a PWM signal to the brakes. And so probably it's going to be a max of like 25% PWM, because don't forget, your DC-DC converter, you don't want to sort of stress it too much. And so it would PWM on a MOSFET on a heatsink, and then that should be good. And then I was thinking, on top of that, I can give you, you as in my boss, as in also me, give us like 2 sort of test points on this device that I'd be building, where you can hook up your multimeter and check the resistance of the brakes. And so if the brakes are open, OL, then, something's broken. If the resistance is way too low, it's going to blow a fuse, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So then these relays that I have, the 5 relays, you just just route the input, what it switches. You take, power off your DC-DC converter, which has to be fused, probably be fused individually. And then it outputs to a 7-pin connector, and then you plug the trailer into it, and then it'll run these tests. And so on top of that, because it's a microcontroller, right, it could be a series of switches, but the thing is you kind of have to cycle lights to check them. So I figured I'll put a microcontroller and it'll cycle through all the lights. It'll do a pattern. It'll do a right brake, left brake, reverse, park lights, right brake, left brake, whatever, right? But then I was like, okay, but what if you want to be sort of have a light active while you wiggle the harness and make sure it's not a broken wire or whatever, or while you're doing diagnostics? So I was like, okay. So then what I can do is you can manually override and have only that channel open. And so I came to a point where I have a whole bunch of push buttons, because don't forget, it's already microcontroller controlled. So now it's all in software development, which is I plan on learning during my time off. So you imagine this: for every channel, right brake, left brake, park, reverse, and all whatever, you have a button. So you press that button, and then that channel lights. The other button, that other channel lights. That other button, that other channel lights, et cetera, et cetera. But it all stays on. They're toggles. And then I thought, you get another button and it'll cycle through. So you do the toggles, and then another button will cycle through. So far, so good. But then this was all happening in my head, right? And then he said something like, all I would need for it to do now is to, email me a report. And he laughed. But I said, you know what? This is the part, he probably won't listen to this podcast, which is great. He's busy, so, I don't blame him. So the microcontroller I chose, which has just enough inputs, like GPIOs basically, is at ESP32. Here I have ESP32 dev kits V1. I have a whole bunch in stock. Those that follow the channel for a long time, you'll know I have. I think I bought a pack of 10, so I've got a bunch in stock. I have just enough GPIOs for inputs and the outputs that I'm planning on using, and I plan on having this host its own website eventually. This is down the road. So it'll host its own website. And so when you connect to it, you'll be able to control the lights on your phone via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. And so basically, you'll be able to go to the back of the trailer and pull out your phone, connect to the ESP32, and control the individual channels by yourself. That is not that difficult to do. The eventual thing that I want to do with revision, 3 or 4 or whatever. And by the way, this will all be released open source. This will all be YouTube channels, because I think people should be making their own if they have a need for it. So eventually, what I want to do is have current detection to detect the current going through all the channels. And if there is a short or an open, so a short would blow a fuse or trip a breaker, whatever, or an open, so basically no current would flow, for example, like the trailer brakes or whatever, then it would, send an email or like show on the screen a report that you can either screenshot or, print as in save as a document, telling you what's wrong. And I feel as though the ESP32 is way powerful enough to do all of these things and more. And so that's why I chose to put an ESP32 in this project. Now I was thinking, what sort of enclosure do we want for this? Well, I started thinking of sort of designing and 3D printing a box, right? With 3D printers, you can sort of make the box that you want. It is a little limited by your build volume or whatever. But then my boss had the great idea that we have a store sort of like Harbor Freight here in Canada called Princess Auto. So we could go down to Princess Auto and pick up an ammo box. They're actually fairly inexpensive, and I just need to get one big enough to house a whole bunch of relays and a couple of PCBs, and then basically I will drill holes through it and mount, the trailer plugs and everything. I'm planning on making serviceable, because really this whole thing has to do with serviceability. I complain often that automotive manufacturers do not have serviceability in mind when they design things. And so I'm trying to design this with serviceability in mind. And so just think of an ammo box, probably for like big bullets, though it's going to be fairly big, at least like a foot and some long by, 6 to 8 inches wide by whatever, 10 inches tall, pretty big. But in the side will be a dual connector, which will have the 7-pin truck side connector and the 4-pin truck side connector. And then inside we'll house the bunch of relays. So 5 relays. I'm using micro relays. They're the skinny ones to take up a little bit less space, and they will be socketed into the PCBs. So basically you just have to get these, solder in spade terminals, the female versions, and I'll just make a footprint for them in KiCad and then put that together. And then you'll be able to socket in and out these relays. Then I'll have a board that carries the ESP32 and very likely the push buttons as well. I don't quite have enough channels to light an LED on each button. I'm not quite at that point yet. The ESP32 is short, probably about 3 or 4 digital pins in order to do that. But what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to grab power from the output of the relays and use that to to feed back to the switchboard and have little LEDs on the board to show when that channel is active. So that a couple of test points so you can test things with your multimeter, resistances with your multimeter. Everything should be fused. So there's probably going to be an area with, about 7 fuses. I also want a little box, a little area in the ammo can where there's a little, box with a snapshot lid or like a lever lid or something like that, where I can put extra parts. So extra fuses, extra relays, maybe another ESP32. So if anything goes awry, you have extra parts on hand. Also, I want to put wiring schematics and the meanings of what each fuse does and whatever in that section too. So you always have with you, don't have to like diagnose problems when stuff goes wrong. You'll be able to trace back all the faults and stuff like that. And then to cram this even more packed, I want to have a dummy trailer inside this box too. I think I should be able to fit this in, but the plan is that you should be able to connect this box not only to a trailer to test it, but to a truck or a car, whatever, like the vehicle side connector, and it have bulbs that simulate a trailer. So it would have 2 dual filament bulbs, for the park and brakes on both sides. It would have probably little peanut bulbs to do the reverse lights. Probably just need 1, but you could put 2 to pull a little bit more current. And then I want to put a headlight bulb to act as if it is a trailer brake. So you'll be able to apply the trailer brake module and the light will change, the headlight bulb will change brightness based on how much voltage is coming through the line. And so this one ammo box, just think of this one ruggedized ammo box that you can take and throw in the back of your car. You'll be able to carry around and do diagnostics on trailers and on the towing equipment of a vehicle. So that's the grand idea. And now this is not just vaporware. I actually got some of the coding done, which is crazy, I know, because I'm not a good coder. But I already got some of the coding done. I have it to the point where I have one channel that I press the button and it cycles the lights on off on a 1 second. It basically does a blinky sketch, but commanded by a button. And I also managed to implement blink without delay. And so the button presses don't stop the ESP32 from doing other things, which will be very important, because if you want to turn on the other channels, you'll have to click those buttons and you'll have to read those button presses. And so this is a great jumping off point for me to learn a little bit more coding and put what I'm learning into application right away. Like it's something that's actually going to work. And my boss is thrilled with the idea. We're going to have to work on, for sure, he's going to want to pay me for my labor on this project. But the thing is that my labor isn't a direct cost to his business, right? In this case, I am doing this primarily to apply my knowledge to making, custom solutions. It's stuff I love doing. Gets my brain going and working. And I can work on my, design to envelope skills, which is where you design, circuit boards and accessories to fit in a certain form factor. I get to work on my PCB design skills because I'm envisioning it's going to take at least 2 PCBs, one to carry the micro and the push buttons, and another one to house the relays and the relay driving equipment. Oh, by the way, I have actually managed to build a relay driving circuit using an optocoupler. For those of you that don't know, an optocoupler is basically like a transistor, but it uses light to activate the transistor all within a package. And so there could be high voltage faults in the circuit, but it won't damage the microcontroller because the microcontroller is literally just controlling an LED. So that's fantastic. So I got that working too. So yeah, one board to carry the relays and the relay driving circuitry. So 2 PCBs and then probably a third PCB to house the loads for the trailer simulator. So yeah, basically this is all going to be done. Plus, I'm going to get views on YouTube. Probably not a lot. It's a fairly niche thing, but it doesn't matter. I'm going to get some views. And I'm going to have the PCBs made by PCBWay, today's sponsor. I might as well talk about them now, because basically my plan is to have any PCB that I make for this project be under 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters, so 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters. Because when they're underneath that size, you can get, I usually order 10 for the $5. They say 5 boards for $5, but if you just increase the quantity, the smaller your board is, the more boards you're going to get for that $5 fee. And then the shipping has been fairly reasonable because, everybody's brought up their shipping prices. And so, PCBWay, if you take the slow options, it's something like $9 or $10 to get it shipped. So if you figure about $15 US, you get 10 boards. Usually I manage to get 10. And shipping stacks a little bit too. So if you get 2 different board designs, it's going to be $10 for the 2 plus maybe $15 in shipping. And so actually it's a fairly reasonable thing. But anyways, the point is that I want people using PCBWay. You can check the link in the description for more information. Or whatever PCB company of their choice, but I prefer PCBWay because they support the channel, so you guys should support them too. And then people will be able to make their own testers at home, and everything will be open source, and so you can change and modify the stuff to suit your needs. If you don't need a sort of a vehicle side tester, you only need the trailer side tester, well, you can just build that portion of it. If you don't need the, vice versa too. You can, basically the plan is that the vehicle side tester should also fit on a 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter PCB. And so if you're just interested in checking to see if your truck's wiring is still good, then you can just make that one PCB. You can order that one PCB from PCBWay. It'll be released in their community projects. And then you solder up all the components, and bada bing, bada boom, you plug in your 7-pin and away you go. Now, my boss, he has a 7-pin tester, but the issue with his 7-pin tester and with all the 7-pin testers on the market, at least all the inexpensive ones, is they use LEDs. They use single, either 3 or 5 millimeter LEDs for each channel. And so if you have a wire or a connector that is mostly corroded, it's mostly rusty. Living up here in Canada, we see rust a lot in, especially in Ontario, in the region that I'm in, sort of Eastern Ontario. You can light an LED with 5 milliamps, but as soon as you plug it into a trailer that uses incandescent bulbs, those lights aren't going to light. In fact, I've had some stuff that was so corroded that even LED taillights wouldn't light. And so those testers are good to know if your connection is good or not, like if it has any connection at all. But you really want to draw some load. You want to pull some current from it because you want to make sure that your connections can support it. And what's cool about this too is you'll be able to set up this connector on the vehicle. You'll be able to plug this box into the vehicle and have it run, right, and light up some lights. And then you can touch the harnesses on the vehicle to make sure there's no corrosion and you're not like dropping any voltage. So yeah, this is the plan. I'm actually energized, right? Believe it or not, when you have when you don't have like ridiculous brain drain going on all day, you can actually be creative and get the juices flowing. So let me know what you guys think. I pledge to make videos during the progress of this because it's going to be a big project. And what my problem with my custom 3D printer, which I haven't worked on for a while, is that I haven't updated you guys like ever. Like nobody's seen this thing. So I pledge on making a couple of videos. In fact, the first video should be shortly enough because I did get a breakthrough, right? I have a couple breakthroughs. I figured out some of the coding. I figured out, driving these 12-volt relays using an optocoupler with an ESP32, which I didn't even think it was going to work because ESP32s are 3.3 volts, and etc. So I want to take you guys along for the ride. I'm probably going to do a lot of this development on my live streams as well. That's another thing. I plan on live streaming more often. So check out the link in the description or the show notes. It's SE Made a Stream. I think that's the name of my live streaming channel. But definitely check it out, and I hope to see you there. Another thing I'm pretty excited to tackle, as soon as my car basically gets fixed, as soon as I fix my car, is going to be to get some lumber to build my solar array in the backyard. This has been a long time coming, but again, I've had no time to work on it. And now I can't even bring lumber home from the hardware store since my wife's car is way too small to fit lumber like that. And I don't want to bother my old man more than I have to, because already he's helping me, bring the transmissions back and forth to the vehicle recycler. So I need to get some lumber and to make like an A-frame, something adjustable to have my solar panels in the backyard. So this has been, long time coming. I've got 2 solar panels that are sitting here in the basement doing absolutely nothing. And so let me talk to you a little bit about the challenges about that. So first and foremost, I kind of need to build this structure a little bit tall. There's a lot of trees and stuff in my backyard and on my neighbor's side on both sides. And so I need a little bit of height in order to get the most sunshine on the solar panels. I also need my solar panels to be adjustable angles. During the summer, I need to face the solar panels south, but very little. It has to be mostly pointing up, to the sky. But in winter, which we are heading towards very quickly, I might add, it's already September 13th on the day that I am recording this. In the summer, you need the panels facing south at, like 90 degrees almost. I'm exaggerating, but like 45, 50, 60 degrees, because the sun is so low in the sky all day that you do need them canted over. So I do have to design a structure that I'll be able to adjust the angle of the solar panels. And likely during the transition of the season, I'll probably have to go and adjust the angle on the panels about once a week. And so it has to be adjustable. Again, it has to be economical. I'm not making any income anymore. I'm only making the very part-time income from the mechanic's job, but I'm off for 3 weeks, no vacation pay for a part-timer. So yeah, so it has to be economical, but it also has to be sturdy. The reason why it has to be sturdy is because it is not uncommon for nights to get over 10 centimeters. What's that? 10 centimeters, about 4-ish, 5-ish inches of snow in a 24-hour period. It's actually fairly common to get that much snow. So the snow will build up on the surface of the panels, and I'll have to go squeegee them off. But I won't be able to squeegee them off, all the time, especially if it snows overnight. So, I'll be able to squeegee it off in the morning if I'm awake early enough to tread all the way back there and scrape them off. But yeah, it has to be adjustable and sturdy. So I'm not sure what kind of solution I'm going to come up with for that quite yet, but I am thinking about it. So, it has to be kind of tall, kind of sturdy. Can't be too much of an eyesore, I guess, although I don't care that much about the eyesore. And then I have to run quite a long length of cable to get it to, because my backyard is very, very narrow, but very long. So I'm going to have to run quite a bit of cable from the solar panels themselves to my basement here where I do all my work. And I'm actually going to replace one of my windows with, pieces of plywood with insulation, probably get some blue foam or something like that. And then I need to run the wires in and then, caulk around the hole, CAULK for those sensors listening. So caulk around the hole to make sure that it's well insulated and not going to leak water and stuff like that. And then, bring the wires in, and that should be what's needed. So basically, I'm going to have to run a ton of wire. I'm going to have to design and build a wooden structure to hold that all together in the backyard. And then once they're, ran into the house, I need to get, a safety disconnect, something that I can flip, quite easily, and make sure all that is safe. Then I have to, that's when I can start doing experiments with charging batteries and all sorts of things like that. And actually, while we're on the subject of batteries, also this vacation will allow me to mess with my lithium iron phosphate batteries finally. Because here is the issue with lithium iron phosphate batteries. They have a massive amount of capacity. Mine specifically have 105 amp hours. Each cell, I have 16 cells. How you're supposed to charge them is you're supposed to put them all in parallel and then charge them up. Well, I don't have a power supply capable of putting that many watts. So it will take weeks to charge them, at a couple amps. Because basically, if you put all 16, let's just say they're 100 amp hours, you put all 16 in parallel, you have a 3.2 volt, 16,000 amp hour cell? Yeah, 16,000 amp hours. Does that make sense? 100 amp hours times 16. That's 1,600? My brain is fried. Yeah, 1,600 amp hours. And so at 16 amps, which is a lot, by the way, to output, it'll take 100 hours to charge up. And at the end of the charge, it charges much slower than that. And I think any sane person would only want to charge these batteries while I'm home. So I could, take a look and make sure that they don't catch fire or anything. So not only while I'm home, but while I'm able to supervise them. So that has been the big holdup for me, is that I don't have that much time where I am home and I can supervise these batteries. The other thing I want to do is I want to build sort of like a fireproof enclosure. They should not catch fire. I'll repeat that. They should not catch fire. Lithium iron phosphide is very safe chemistry. You can drill through them with a power drill while they're full charged, and they will not catch fire. However, they are capable of discharges that are powerful enough to create fires in the stuff they're discharging through. So I have this kind of idea where I want to get like a steel box, put rock wool inside of it, and store the batteries in there. And so even if they do catch fire, rock wool is not flammable. Rock wool is like the insulation. It's kind of like a beigeish color, a yellowish color. Not the fiberglass bat insulation, but the denser stuff that people use for sound deadening and whatever. So rock wool is not flammable, and the steel box should be able to resist some fairly high temperatures if need be. So store them in there. Then I could probably charge them with a little bit more impunity. Wouldn't have to worry about it so much. But again, something like an ESP32 camera or a Raspberry Pi camera is something that I would be interested in to keep watch on this thing while it's charging. Let's not forget, I have lead acid batteries, right? I have those UPS batteries that I've been using on my boat, which have been fantastic, especially for batteries I got for free out of the trash. But those things killed a Kaiweets power supply. Kaiweets, last year, the year before, sent me a, like a lab power supply, like was it 30, I think it was a 30 volt 5 amp or 30 volt 10 amp. And running it at near its maximum power. Actually, it was a little bit less than maximum because when you're charging a battery, voltage goes up. So it does a constant voltage, constant current. But anyways, overnight, killed it. If you go read the fine print, it says it's not for continuous use, intermittent use only. And so you could probably use it for a couple hours, no problem. But I charged this 100 amp hour lead acid battery overnight and it died. And so the other things I have to charge these lithium batteries would be my read-in power supplies, which again, I would be sad if anything happened to them because they are awesome. And I have my old 3806 power supply, which puts out up to 38 volts at 6 amps maximum. So I could pump 6 amps through these cells, but at 100 amp hours, we're still talking about, 6, what is like 20 hours, 18 hours, something like that, of continuous charging. And again, it gets slower at the high end. So this is the big problem. But now that I'm available to be home more often, the plan is that I will be able to charge up the lithium iron the phosphide batteries, the lithium batteries, and I will be able to make sure they're top balanced. I'm going to use an active balancer for that. But again, that takes forever. And so, yeah, that's the deal. And I've also developed in the last week or two, finished the development on the sort of like the bracket support system that I made for these batteries. And so they'll be ready to show off in a video as well. I kind of went a little bit cheap, like a little bit lazy on the mount for the BMS. But look, I needed to get it done and I can always improve it later. So that video is ready to be filmed as well. Probably won't do it this week because I'm going to pull my transmission probably tomorrow. But next week or this weekend, maybe while I'm live, maybe I'll be able to film that video. So if you're excited about that, let me know. All right, last thing I want to chat about, and then I have to leave to edit this podcast so you guys can listen to it, is coding. Every time that my college contract ends and I'm being told that it's not being renewed because the program isn't go ahead or they have enough labor or whatever, I get this little bit of existential crisis that I've made the wrong career decision in going into teaching or even going into mechanics in general, which led me to teaching and whatever. The lifestyle is just really not stable. And I am getting older, and especially when I have big issues like my car breaking down on me and perusing the used car market and realizing I don't really have the money to replace this car at this point, because any used car I buy will probably need some repairs as well. So I have to budget for that as well. So the subject of learning to code keeps coming up to me, which is something I feel pretty strongly about. Now, those of you who know me quite well will know that I do have issues with the learning of coding. I was never really good at math, and whatever the center of the brain is that you use for math, I feel like is also used for learning coding. So it really doesn't work for me. And I watch a lot of videos and I try to put it in practice, and I can code a little bit. Like I could code enough to get myself into some massive trouble in the Arduino IDE. But learning more in-depth concepts is very difficult for me. So last year or the year before, I don't remember now, there was a Humble Bundle for a bunch of courses from Mammoth Interactive. Now, if you're wanting to learn to code, there's a lot of ways to go about it for free. There's a lot of YouTube videos. freecodecamp.org is a good one. They're a good website as well. And there is codeacademy.com as well. But Code Academy, which was the way I've used before to try to learn to code, is no longer completely free. In fact, I feel like they've moved a lot of their free their free courses to a paid tier. And so when I saw that Mammoth Interactive, again, this is not a sponsor of the podcast. I already have a sponsor for the podcast, and they don't know anything about me. Mammoth Interactive had a Humble Bundle, so I think I paid like 30 or 40 Canadian dollars, and I got the whole bundle. So there's something like 40 or more courses for me to do. And maybe not during my vacation time, because I do actually have to try to take some downtime to recenter myself. But during the next year or so, 8 months, 9 months, 10 months before I get another contract at the college, I pledge to learn a little bit more coding. And so my question to you, the loyal listeners of the channel, maybe you don't watch the YouTube videos, but how interesting do you think it would be if I tried to learn coding well enough to try to make tutorials? And I mean, if I learn coding well enough that I can sort of understand where it didn't work out in my old man brain, right? Like where I figure out the reasons why I couldn't learn coding. Would you actually watch a video of a sort of like a different approach to learning coding? This is a question for you. So if you're on a platform that has a sort of comments or whatever, I would love to see how many of you would be interested on my take on trying to teach coding. The plan for me is to start, a good friend of mine, another maker, he recommended to learn in this order. So HTML first, then CSS, and then PHP, or reverse those. It might have been HTML, PHP, and CSS. And the reason why I agree with his thoughts, like he probably has some very good reasons for it, but the reasons why I'm kind of excited to start with that. HTML is actually a fairly simple language, which is nice, but I also have a website, simpleelectronics.ca. And I plan on putting more written content up on it because not everybody learns the same. And I really should have like a written article to go with my YouTube videos. So I plan on doing a little bit more writing. So that's going to be there. But on top of that, I have this dream of like having a website that curates content. Like this is obviously, I don't have the time to do this, but I think websites are very important. I pay for hosting every single year, and I pay for domains. So I've got a couple of them. And I really want to put more work into my website and my YouTube channel. Basically, the things that were hard for me to understand or to find or to learn about or whatever, I want to sort of curate it. So that there's one more source on the internet of that information. I'm going to try to present it in a way that is understandable to me. So those of you who have similar mental makeups as me will be able to access that information sort of easily. On top of that, I have another job, right? I'm a mobile mechanic, and I am learning how to work on vehicles that I'm just not used to working on. And a lot of that means looking up specs a lot. And so the common specs that I run into often, I want to build a small database. I mean, I'll get to learn how databases work. Some people make a shit ton of money working in databases for a living, but I want to host my own database of my commonly searched for specs. And so that I can access it from my own website. I'll always have the information on me because at the moment I have to log into proprietary software. I use ProDemand or just search the internet at large. So I want to keep notes in sort of like a database. And at the same time, if it helps someone else, find common torque specs or fluid capacities and, oil weights and sort of like maintenance schedules, stuff like that. if it helps someone else, then why not have it public facing? So yeah, my automotive website, Dan Fixes Cars, which I try not to cross promote, but I will do it. I will do it now anyways. danfixescars.com. It's going to have more automotive content. I have a YouTube channel as well, and I do want to work on it. But I want to build websites because, I don't really have a legacy. My wife and I don't have kids, and we don't ever plan on having kids. Probably simply won't be having kids. So my gift to the world is just the knowledge I can share. And also, it comes with being a little bit bummed that my automotive knowledge isn't bringing me much income. Simply because I can go work in any repair shop, but the issue is the industry is kind of sick right now, and most of the people making a lot of good money doing repairs, they either run their own business and have really good clientele, or they're stretching the truth or stealing from their customers. I've seen it many times before. Anyway, I'm tangenting here, but an honest mechanic is usually not the ones that do really well. Here in Canada, an honest but good mechanic will probably bring in a gross, roughly $80,000 to $85,000 a year, which is, it's decent living, but don't forget that's in Canadian pesos, so you have to knock 35, 36% off of that. But also you need to maintain, 20 grand worth of tools. So it is a good wage, but you are working your butt off to make, 80 to 90,000 a year. And it's very hard on your body, and you probably can't do it forever. So the plan is that I'm going to try to learn coding, something I can do, whether or not I've broken my wrist or whatever it is. Oh, wrist probably not. Ankle. Let's go ankle, because you do need to type. And yeah, the plan is HTML, PHP, CSS, and then I'm thinking of re-attacking C++, because that sort of helps with the Arduino world, which helps with the YouTube videos. Or maybe I'll go Python, because, with the new microcontrollers, you can often just write stuff in Python, MicroPython or CircuitPython, whatever it may be. And then that should be, a boon also to the YouTube channel. And then at the same time, if I learn in depth enough and I do enough projects to sort of prove my mettle, maybe I can look for a job that includes coding, because, just being real with you guys that are here at the end of the podcast. So, you're the true fans. I took stock, and I'm not quite happy with where I am at this point in my life. I feel like I put a lot of effort I gave a lot of myself into my career. And although I am well paid part-time working for my new boss, and I'm well paid at the college when I actually get contracts, it's still like the top of the line, mechanic pay is just not that great. Especially when you have a conversation with literally any other tradesperson, electricians, plumbers, HVAC techs, elevator techs, refrigeration techs. They're all making 25 to 30% more per hour than your average mechanic is. And so I think it's time for me to sort of find a different way to get my knowledge working for me and with me, and maybe think about a career swap. I will tell you something that has come to my mind more recently is I've been looking at sort of like machine shops that rebuild engines and stuff like that in the area, and I have been thinking of starting a new series on my Dan Fixes Cars YouTube channel where I go and, take a look inside their shops, see what's involved in, machining down cylinders. I mean, I know all this stuff in principle and in theory, but I don't know the nuts and bolts of it. I want to meet the people behind it, building awesome cars. I would love, I mean, maybe I shared this, but maybe I didn't, but I would love to have like a workspace with a hoist so I can actually, use my skills to make YouTube videos, a private space with a hoist. And like, I can sort of arrange this. I've known people throughout my career that I've called them friends before, but we lost contact now. But I do know where there are some hoists, but it's not my space. It's not something where I can leave a car for 2-3 days. And so, maybe interviewing the people who do this who run successful businesses, there could be like a fair exchange where I'm going to generate content and at the same time they get a little bit of exposure and leave it at that. And then if it gets much more popular, because let's be honest, the automotive world is more popular than the electronics world, then maybe I can move on to, to a point where I can make videos about fixing cars, like tutorials on fixing cars or stuff like that, where I could maybe justify investing some money to rent a space with a hoist for a couple days and, do some modifications, maybe even, take in people's cars, do diagnostics, stuff like that. Because it's strange. Like when I do my YouTube channel, I'm making videos of stuff that I've either just learned or I'm currently learning on. Like I'm not an expert in electronics, but I can definitely say for a fact that I am an expert when it comes to automotive stuff. I've worked at a Honda dealership for most of my career. So you put me in front of a Honda and I can diagnose most issues on a Honda within 15 to 20 to maybe half an hour for the complicated problems. Some very, very complicated problems took me, a couple hours because there still are those things where, some stuff is hard to access. But like literally, I know Honda's like the back of my hand. You can put me in a room with any car and access to service info. That's one of the things a lot of techs won't tell you, is that service info is a big part of our job. But you put me in a room with that and any problem, and I'm confident I'll be able to diagnose it. Maybe not as fast as on a Honda, but there are very few things in this world that I'm very good at. And working on cars is one of those things where I am very good at, sometimes reluctantly, but still very good. And so the fact that I could be that skilled in something like fixing cars, but even at the very max, I'll be making 80 grand a year, but that's like, blood, sweat, and tears, 80 grand a year. I'll probably be able to go full throttle on that for 2-3 years, and then my body will just disintegrate into trash. Already, my body's falling apart since I'm 35 or 36 now. But the point is, somehow I have to find a way to put that knowledge out into the world and swap careers completely, or put that into the world and sort of build opportunities for myself, or, make some money so I'm not living, contract to contract, basically, while waiting for contracts, and be able to afford a decent lifestyle. So yeah, that's my first world problems. And I'm going to go and edit this podcast. Hopefully I'm going to get a guest next week. I'm in contact with a couple people. A few of them are kind of slow to reply to emails. Sometimes it's my problem because I don't follow up enough. But hopefully next week I'll have a great guest on for you. Thanks everyone for listening, and I hope to catch you on the next one. Let me know what you thought of this podcast in the comments section or the reviews section or whichever. Thanks for listening.